Hello and welcome to another video. Today I wanted to make a short video talking about how asexuality is different from other LGBT plus sexualities. Because I do think that it is different, and I think that it's worth talking about that and recognizing that difference. But I won't have any more preamble. Without further ado, let's get started. So, a sexual orientation describes whom you're attracted to, which gender you're attracted to, and how you're attracted to that or those genders. And I think that's a way in which people of different sexualities can relate to each other. So, for example, if you're straight, you might be able to relate to a gay person because you still feel sexual attraction, you just feel it towards a different gender. Asexuality stands apart from, I guess, the majority of other sexual orientations because you don't feel that sexual attraction, and therefore there isn't that ability to relate to people of other orientations. And although that may seem like a fairly trivial thing, being able to relate to people of other sexualities, I think that helps grow acceptance and understanding of these orientations. If someone realizes that a gay person is the same as them as a straight person, just their attraction is directed towards someone else, that makes sense. That's something they can easily wrap their head around. But if you turn around and say to the straight person that there are people who don't feel that, then their experience is suddenly vastly different from their own, from that of a straight person. And I think that makes it a lot more difficult for some people to accept asexuality. And I think this is then just made so much worse by the way that society talks about and treats asexuality and sexuality in general. So obviously, sex is pretty important to life. I'm not saying that in the sense that not having sex somehow makes your life lesser, but in the sense that as biological organisms, we require sex to reproduce. And it's understandable then that this has become ingrained in our culture, that people seek out sex and that it is very important to their daily life and their romantic life and their relationships. But obviously it is so much more than just a means of reproduction nowadays. As if it ever was just for reproduction. I'm sure since the dawn of time, animals and humans have been having sex for fun. But I think that nowadays, at least, society is so hyper-focused on it. And this hyperfixation on sex and sexuality means it's harder for people to accept someone who doesn't conform to that. Someone who doesn't feel sexual attraction because they are very different from the norm. And not only the norm, but what society tells us should be the norm. And I distinguish between those two things because society's ideal can often be very different to reality. So, for example, if you think about body image, the ideal body standards based on Western culture, at least, are very, very different from the average. You won't see the bodies of those you see in magazines and films, for example, in everyday life all the time, because the majority of people aren't that fit, or whatever the standard is of the day. So we have this difference between what is normal and what society's ideal is. But in the case of sex, I think that normal and that ideal or that expectation align a lot more closely than something like, for example, body image. Obviously, society is very hypersexualized. I imagine the majority of people aren't that sexual, or at least I would like to think this, because sex makes me uncomfortable. But I think the majority of people would say that sex is important in their life. And for society, sex is an important part of life. So that makes it so much more difficult for people who identify as asexual, or for whom sexual attraction and sex aren't as important, to openly talk about and discuss their experience. because it's so different from the norm and because it's so different from what we're told we should be. There wasn't really a concluding thought to this stream of consciousness. This is very much improvised and off the cuff. I have absolutely zero notes. So I hope if you made it this far in the video that you enjoyed it. And if you would like to hear me talk about any of the things that I've spoken about in this video in more depth, then feel free to let me know in the comments below. And also, as always, if there's something you want me to talk about, then leave that in the comments below too, because I do read all the comments, although I know as of late I have not been very good at responding to them. It gets a bit overwhelming sometimes when I look at the comments and there are so many of them and I read them, but I don't know how to properly respond to them, so I'll wait, and then by the time I've waited there are more comments and it's just a never-ending cycle. I just need to spend a good half an hour going through all the comments that I haven't responded to and responding to them, and then I'll get back into my normal groove of responding to comments. I think that's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like. I post videos every Saturday, so if you want to see more, then feel free to subscribe. That is all I had to say today. Have a wonderful day, and I shall see you next time. And this is the second video I've recorded in my pajamas. And although I know if you take sex out of the equation, then humans would very quickly die off.